Maria Santos had been walking the same forest path for 3 years now. Every morning at 6, she would take the shortcut through riverside woods to reach the mansion where she worked as a housekeeper. The wealthy neighborhood of Heights was her destination, but the forest path saved her nearly an hour of bus travel time. At 28, Maria was a single mother working 2 jobs to support her 7-year-old daughter. The main job was cleaning houses for rich families, and in the evenings she stocked shelves at a grocery store. Money was always tight, but Maria never complained. She believed hard work would eventually lead to better days. This particular Tuesday morning felt different. The October air was colder than usual, and fog hung low between the trees. Maria pulled her thin jacket around her shoulders and quickened her pace. She had overslept by 15 minutes, which meant she might be late for work at the Henderson mansion. The Hendersons were one of her better employers. Mrs. Henderson treated her with respect and paid fairly. Maria couldn't afford to lose this job, especially with school fees coming up next month. As she hurried down the familiar dirt path, her mind was focused on the day's tasks ahead. About halfway through the forest, Maria heard something unusual. It sounded like muffled groaning, almost like someone was in pain but couldn't speak clearly. She stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound came again, definitely human, and it seemed to be coming from deeper in the woods. Maria's first instinct was to keep walking. Her grandmother had always told her to mind her own business and stay out of trouble. But the groaning continued, and it sounded desperate. What if someone was hurt? What if they needed help? Against her better judgment, Maria stepped off the path and followed the sound. She pushed through thick bushes and low-hanging branches. Her work clothes caught on thorns, but she kept going. The groaning was getting louder, which meant she was heading in the right direction. After about 50 yards into the dense woods, Maria saw something that made her stop dead in her tracks. A man was tied to a large oak tree. His hands were bound behind the tree trunk with thick rope, and his ankles were tied together. A dirty cloth was stuffed in his mouth, which explained the muffled sounds she had heard. The man was well-dressed, wearing an expensive-looking business suit that was now torn and dirty. His dark hair was disheveled, and there were cuts on his face. When he saw Maria, his eyes went wide with relief and hope. He started making urgent sounds behind the gag, clearly trying to communicate. Maria looked around nervously. This felt dangerous. Whoever had done this might still be nearby. Her heart was pounding, but she couldn't just leave someone tied up in the woods. That would be wrong, and Maria had been raised to help others when she could. She approached slowly, still scanning the area for any signs of danger. When she reached the man, she could see he had been crying. His expensive watch was still on his wrist, and she noticed his shoes were Italian leather, the kind that cost more than she made in a month. "I'm going to help you," she whispered, "but we need to be quiet in case whoever did this is still around." The man nodded frantically. Maria pulled out a small knife she carried for protection during her early morning walks. It took several minutes to cut through the thick rope binding his hands. Her fingers were shaking, partly from fear and partly from the cold morning air. When his hands were free, The man immediately pulled the gag from his mouth and took deep, gasping breaths. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "Thank God you found me," he said quietly. "I've been here since yesterday afternoon. I thought I was going to die." Maria was working on the rope around his ankles. "What happened to you? Who did this?" "It's complicated," the man said, rubbing his wrists where the rope had cut into his skin. "Are you alone? Is it safe?" "I think so," Maria replied, finally freeing his feet. "But we should get out of here quickly. Can you walk?" The man tried to stand but stumbled. He had been tied up for nearly 18 hours, and his legs weren't working properly yet. Maria caught his arm and helped steady him. "What's your name?" she asked. "David," he said, then paused as if deciding whether to say more. "David." Maria had heard that name before, but she couldn't place where. Right now, it didn't matter. What mattered was getting both of them to safety. "I'm Maria. Let me help you walk. We need to get back to the main path." Supporting David's weight, Maria guided them through the woods. It was slow going because David kept stumbling, and they had to stop several times for him to rest. During one of these breaks, he looked at her with curiosity. "Why did you help me? You could have just kept walking." Maria shrugged. "Because it was the right thing to do. My grandmother always said that when you have a chance to help someone, you should take it, even if it's inconvenient." David studied her face. Even in his exhausted state, he could see that Maria was genuinely kind. There was something pure about her motivation that surprised him. In his world, people usually helped others because they expected something in return. When they finally reached the main path, David seemed stronger. The circulation was returning to his legs, and he could walk with less support. "Where can I take you?" Maria asked. "Do you need to go to a hospital?" "No hospital," David said quickly. "Too many questions. Is there somewhere we can go where I can make some phone calls?" Maria thought about this. She was already late for work, and she didn't know this man at all. But he was clearly in trouble, and he seemed genuinely grateful for her help. "There's a small diner about a mile from here," she said. "The owner is a friend of mine. You could use their phone." "That sounds perfect." They walked together down the path. David kept looking over his shoulder, clearly worried that whoever had tied him up might be following them. Maria noticed his nervousness and started to feel afraid again. "Should I be worried?" she asked. "Are we in danger?" David considered lying to protect her, but she had saved his life. She deserved honesty. "Possibly," he admitted. "The people who did this are very dangerous. Once I make some calls, I'll have protection, but right now, yes, we could be in danger." This information made Maria walk faster, but she didn't abandon David. Something about him made her want to keep helping, even though the smart thing would be to leave him and get to safety. "What kind of business are you in?" she asked as they walked. "I run a company," David said vaguely. "What kind of company?" David hesitated. He owned one of the largest technology firms in the country, Technologies. His company was worth billions of dollars, and his personal fortune was substantial. But telling this kind woman that he was extremely wealthy might change how she treated him, and right now, He was enjoying being helped by someone who expected nothing in return. "It's a technology business," he said, which was true but not complete. They reached the diner, a small place called that served breakfast and lunch to local workers. Maria knew the owner, Mrs., because she sometimes stopped there for coffee when she had extra money. "Mrs.," Maria called as they entered. "This is my friend David. He was in an accident and needs to use your phone." Mrs. was a kind woman in her 60s who had been running the diner for 30 years. She took one look at David's torn clothes and bruised face and immediately became concerned. "Oh my goodness, what happened to you?" "Car trouble," David said, using the story he and Maria had agreed on during their walk. "I got lost in the woods trying to find help." "Well, the phone is right there behind the counter. Help yourself. And Maria, honey, you sit down and have some coffee. You look pale." David went to make his calls while Maria sat at the counter. Mrs. poured her a cup of coffee and wouldn't take any money for it. "That man doesn't look like he was just lost in the woods," Mrs. whispered. "Those look like rope marks on his wrists." Maria glanced over at David, who was speaking quietly into the phone. She could only hear fragments of his conversation, but he mentioned something about sending security immediately and finding who was responsible. "I found him tied up in the forest," Maria admitted quietly. "Someone had hurt him." Mrs. eyes went wide. "Maria Santos, you could have been killed. What if whoever did that to him had still been around?" "I know it was dangerous, but I couldn't just leave him there." "That's because you have a good heart, but you need to be more careful. You have to think about." David finished his phone calls and came back to where Maria was sitting. His entire demeanor had changed. He seemed more confident now, more in control. "Everything is arranged," he told Maria. "My security team will be here in 15 minutes." "A security team?" Mrs. asked. David realized he had said too much. "I work for a large company. When employees have problems, they send help." This explanation satisfied Mrs., but Maria was starting to suspect that David was not just another businessman. The expensive clothes, the mention of security teams, the way he carried himself now that he felt safe, it all suggested he was someone important. While they waited, David ordered breakfast for both of them. He insisted on paying, and Maria noticed that he pulled out a thick roll of cash from his jacket pocket. Most people didn't carry that much money with them. "Tell me about yourself," David said as they ate. "Do you live around here?" "I live in Riverside, about 3 miles from here. I was walking to work when I heard you in the woods." What kind of work do you do?" "I clean houses mostly. Sometimes I work at the grocery store in the evenings." David nodded, taking in this information. Maria was working multiple jobs, walking through the woods early in the morning to save money on transportation, and wearing clothes that had clearly seen better days. Yet she had risked her safety to help a complete stranger. "Do you have family?" "A daughter," Maria said with a smile. "She's 7 years old and the kid in her class." "What about her father?" Maria's expression became guarded. He's not in the picture, it's just and me. David sensed there was pain behind those words, but he didn't push for details. They ate in comfortable silence until 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the diner. "Oh, that's my ride," David said. 6 men in dark suits entered the diner. They moved like military personnel, scanning the area and positioning themselves strategically. The leader, a tall man with gray hair, approached their table. "Mister, we've secured the perimeter. Are you injured?" "I'm fine, Martinez. Just some cuts and bruises." Maria suddenly remembered where she had heard the name David before. It had been on the news several months ago. He was the billionaire who owned Technologies, one of the biggest companies in the world. She looked at David with new understanding. No wonder he had security teams and expensive clothes. No wonder someone might want to kidnap him. She had just saved one of the richest men in America. David noticed the recognition in her eyes. "You figured it out. You're that David, the billionaire." "Oh, yes." Maria felt suddenly out of place. Here she was, a house cleaner wearing old clothes, sitting next to one of the most powerful men in the country. What must he think of her? But David's next words surprised her. "Maria, I need to ask you something important. The people who kidnapped me are still out there. Until we catch them, anyone who helped me could be in danger. I'd like to offer you protection." Protection? My security team can watch your apartment and make sure you and your daughter are safe. Maria was overwhelmed. A few hours ago, her biggest worry was being late for work. Now she was apparently in danger from kidnappers who had targeted a billionaire. "I don't understand. Why would they care about me?" Martinez, the security chief, answered. "If they know someone helped Mr. escape, they might try to hurt that person to send a message or to find out what Mr. told them." But he didn't tell me anything." "They don't know that," David said. "Please, Maria, let me protect you, and it's the least I can do after what you did for me." Maria's mind was racing. She had to get to work. She had to pick up from school. She had a life that didn't include billionaires and security teams. "I need to think about this," she said. "Of course, but in the meantime, can my team at least drive you where you need to go today, starting with your job?" Maria realized she was now 2 hours late for work at the Henderson mansion. Mrs. Henderson was probably wondering where she was. "I need to get to work in Heights." "Oh, we'll take you there." As they prepared to leave the diner, David pulled out his business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my personal phone number," he said, handing it to Maria. "Call me anytime, day or night, if you need anything or if you feel unsafe." Maria looked at the card. On the front was printed David, Chief Executive Officer, Technologies. On the back, in his handwriting, was a phone number and the words, "Thank you for saving my life." The ride to the Henderson mansion was surreal. Maria sat in the back of a luxury SUV, watching the familiar streets go by from behind bulletproof glass. David sat beside her, and 2 security guards were in the front seat. "Maria," David said as they neared her destination, "I meant what I said about protection. These people took me right off a busy street in broad daylight. They're professionals and they're dangerous. What did they want from you? Money, probably, or information about my company's security systems. I'm not sure. They never got a chance to tell me their demands because you found me before they came back. The SUV stopped in front of the Henderson mansion. Maria had been dreading this moment. How was she going to explain being 2 hours late and arriving in a car that probably cost more than most people's houses? "Or will I see you again?" she asked David. "I hope so. I'd like to do something to thank you properly." "Oh, you don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. What you did took courage, Maria. Not many people would have helped a stranger in those circumstances." Maria got out of the SUV and walked toward the mansion's front door. As she rang the doorbell, she could see David's security team taking positions around the property. Even though she had told him she needed to think about accepting protection, he was apparently going to provide it whether she agreed or not. Mrs. Henderson answered the door, and her expression immediately showed concern when she saw Maria's disheveled appearance. "Maria, where have you been? I was worried sick when you didn't show up this morning." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson. I had an emergency." "What kind of emergency? And what are those men in suits doing in my driveway?" Maria realized she was going to have to tell at least part of the truth. "I found someone who had been hurt, and I helped them. Those men are making sure I'm safe." Mrs. Henderson looked past Maria at the security team, then back at her housekeeper. In the 3 years Maria had worked for her, nothing like this had ever happened. "You come inside and tell me what's going on." As Maria followed Mrs. Henderson into the house, she wondered how her simple act of kindness that morning had led to this complicated situation. She had saved a billionaire's life, and now her own life might be in danger because of it. But despite the fear and confusion, Maria didn't regret helping David. Her grandmother had taught her to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences. What she didn't know yet was that this act Maria spent the rest of Tuesday trying to concentrate on her cleaning duties at the Henderson mansion, but her mind kept wandering back to the morning's events. Every time she looked out a window, she could see one of David's security guards stationed somewhere on the property. Mrs. Henderson had peppered her with questions during their morning conversation, and Maria had told her the basic story while leaving out the detail about David being a billionaire. When her workday ended at 3 o'clock, Maria found Martinez, the security chief, waiting by the front door. "Mrs. Santos, I'll be driving you to pick up your daughter from school." "That's really not necessary," Maria protested, though she was beginning to feel nervous about the kidnapping situation. "Mr.'s orders," Martinez said firmly. "And I have to say I agree with him. These people who took him are still out there." The drive to school was quiet. Maria sat in the passenger seat of the black SUV, feeling self-conscious. She hoped none of the other parents would see her arriving in such an expensive vehicle. The last thing she needed was questions from neighbors about where she had gotten money for luxury cars. Came running out of the school building with her usual enthusiasm. She was a bright, energetic child with her mother's kind eyes and an infectious smile. When she saw the SUV instead of her mother standing at the usual pickup spot, her expression became confused. "Mom, whose car is this?" "It belongs to someone Mom helped today. This is Mr. Martinez. He was kind enough to give us a ride." Studied Martinez with the bold curiosity that only 7-year-olds possess. "Are you a police officer? You look like the police officers on TV." Martinez smiled slightly. "Something like that, young lady." During the drive home to their small apartment in Riverside, chatted about her day at school. She had gotten an A on her math test and had been chosen to read aloud during story time. Maria listened with pride, but part of her attention was focused on watching for any signs that they were being followed. Their apartment was in a modest complex that had seen better days. The paint was fading, and the parking lot had several potholes, but it was clean and safe, and the rent was affordable. Maria had worked hard to create a warm home for within their limited means. As they approached their building, Maria noticed 2 more security guards positioned near the entrance. Martinez must have seen her expression because he explained. "Mr. wanted to make sure your home is protected. These men will be here around the clock until the kidnappers are caught." "For how long?" "As long as necessary." Inside their apartment, Maria tried to maintain normalcy for sake. She helped with homework while starting dinner, but her mind was still processing everything that had happened. The business card David had given her was on the kitchen counter, and she found herself looking at it repeatedly. At 7 o'clock, while was watching cartoons in the living room, Maria's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. "Hello." "Maria, it's David. How are you holding up?" Just hearing his voice made the morning's events feel real again. "I'm okay, I think. Your security people are very thorough." "Good. I wanted to check on you and also ask if you'd be willing to meet with me tomorrow. There are some things we need to discuss." "Well, what kind of things?" "First, the police will want to interview you about where and how you found me. Second, I'd like to talk about providing some additional security measures for you and—" Maria felt a flutter of anxiety. "Police? I don't understand why they need to talk to me." Because you're a witness, and your testimony might help them catch the people who kidnapped me. I know it seems overwhelming, but it's important." After David hung up, Maria sat at her kitchen table trying to process everything. She had always lived a quiet, simple life. Her biggest problems were usually things like stretch the grocery budget or whether she could afford to buy new shoes when her old ones wore out. Now she was suddenly involved in a kidnapping case and had billionaire security guards watching her apartment. Appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her school clothes but with her hair messy from lying on the couch. "Mom, why are there men in suits standing outside our building?" Maria had been dreading this question, was smart and observant, and it was impossible to hide the security presence from her. "Remember how Mom helped someone who was hurt today? Well, the person who hurt that man might be angry that Mom helped, so these men are here to make sure we're safe." Considered this information with the seriousness that children sometimes display when they sense adult worry. Are we in danger? No, sweetheart. These men are here to protect us, just like police officers protect people. Is the person you helped important? Maria paused, unsure how to explain that she had saved a billionaire without making worry more. Yes, he's very important, and he's very grateful that Mom helped him. That night after was asleep, Maria called her best friend who lived across town. Had been Maria's closest friend since high school, and she was one of the few people Maria trusted completely. I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to tell anyone. Of course, what's wrong? You sound strange. Maria told the entire story, from finding David tied up in the woods to having security guards outside her apartment. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Maria, are you serious? You saved David, the billionaire. Oh, yes. Do you have any idea how rich this man is? His company is worth like $50 billion. I'm starting to understand that. And he has security guards protecting you. Oh, yes. Was quiet for a moment, and then she said something that made Maria's stomach tighten with worry. Maria, you need to be very careful here. Oh, what do you mean? I mean this is not your world. Billionaires don't just become friends with house cleaners. If he's being this nice to you, he wants something. He doesn't want anything from me. I saved his life and he's grateful. Maybe, or maybe he's worried about what you might know or what you might tell people. Rich people like that, they protect themselves first. His words bothered Maria more than she wanted to admit. Was David being kind because he was genuinely grateful, or because he wanted to control the situation? She had felt a real connection with him that morning, but maybe she was being naive. The next morning, Maria called Mrs. Henderson to let her know she would be late for work, because she had to meet with the police. Mrs. Henderson was understanding, but clearly curious about what was happening in Maria's life. The police station was an intimidating place for someone who had never been in trouble with the law. Martinez drove her there and waited in the lobby while she was interviewed by Detective, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Mrs. Santos, I need you to tell me exactly what happened yesterday morning, starting from when you first heard sounds in the woods. Maria went through the story carefully, describing everything she could remember about finding David and helping him escape. Detective took detailed notes and asked follow-up questions about the location, the condition David was in, and whether Maria had seen any signs of the kidnappers. Did Mr. tell you anything about why he might have been kidnapped or who might have done it? No, he just said it was dangerous and that the people who did it were professionals. Did you notice anything unusual in the days before this happened? Anyone following you or watching you? No, nothing like that. After the interview, Detective walked Maria to the lobby where Martinez was waiting. Mrs. Santos, I want you to know that we're taking this case very seriously. Mr. is a prominent figure, and kidnapping is a federal crime. But I also want you to understand that by helping him, you may have put yourself at risk. Everyone keeps telling me that. Because it's true. These people invested time and effort into planning this kidnapping. When their plan failed because of your intervention, they lost whatever they hoped to gain. Some criminals in that situation might want revenge. The detective's words echoed concerns from the night before. Maria was beginning to understand that her simple act of kindness had pulled her into a dangerous world she knew nothing about. Martinez drove her to meet David at his company's headquarters, a gleaming 40-story building in the downtown business district. Maria had seen the building many times when she occasionally traveled downtown for errands, but she had never imagined she would be inside it. The lobby was impressive, with marble floors and modern art. Security guards checked Martinez's ID and made a phone call before allowing them to proceed to the elevators. They rode to the 35th floor, where David's personal office was located. David's secretary, a professional woman named, greeted them warmly and offered Maria coffee while they waited. Through the large windows, Maria could see the entire city spread out below them. The view was breathtaking. When David emerged from a conference room, he looked completely different from the disheveled man she had found tied to a tree. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit and appeared confident and in control. This was David the billionaire, not David the kidnapping victim. Maria, thank you for coming. How did things go with the police? Fine, I think. Detective was very thorough. David led her into his office, which was larger than Maria's entire apartment. The walls were lined with awards and photographs of David with famous politicians and business leaders. One wall had floor-to-ceiling windows that provided an even more spectacular view of the city. "Please sit down," David said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "Can I get you anything to drink?" "I'm fine, thank you." David sat behind his desk, and for a moment the dynamic between them felt different. Yesterday, he had been vulnerable and dependent on her help. Today, he was clearly the powerful businessman in his own environment. "First, I want to thank you again for what you did yesterday. I've been thinking about it all night, and I keep coming back to the fact that you risked your safety for a complete stranger. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No, Maria, they wouldn't have. Most people would have been too scared, or they would have convinced themselves it wasn't their problem." David opened a folder on his desk. "I've taken the liberty of looking into your situation a little bit. I hope you don't mind." Maria felt a chill of unease. "What do you mean, looking into my situation?" "I know that you're working 2 jobs to support yourself, and I know that you walk through the woods every morning to save money on bus fare. I know that you've been struggling financially since father left." The feeling of unease grew stronger. "You investigated me." "I had my security team do a basic background check. When someone saves your life, you want to know who they are." Maria stood up from her chair. "I think I should go." "Please sit down. I'm not trying to invade your privacy. I'm trying to help you." "Help me how?" David leaned forward in his chair. "Maria, I'm a very wealthy man and I believe in repaying debts. You saved my life and I want to make sure you and are taken care of." We're fine. Are you? When was the last time you didn't have to worry about money? When was the last time you could buy something nice without calculating whether you could afford it? Maria wanted to argue, but David was right. She had been struggling financially for years, working constantly just to pay basic expenses and keep in a decent school. What are you suggesting? I'd like to offer you a job. Doing what? Working for me personally. I need someone I can trust to help manage my household staff and oversee my personal affairs. The salary would be significantly more than what you're making now, and it would include benefits like health insurance and a retirement plan. Maria was stunned. You want to hire me based on one morning? I want to hire you based on the character you showed that morning. In my business, I've learned that competence can be taught, but integrity and courage cannot. You have both. The offer was tempting. Maria knew her current situation was unsustainable. She was always one emergency away from financial disaster and deserved better opportunities than Maria could currently provide. I need to think about it. Of course, but while you're thinking, I want you to consider this. The people who kidnapped me are still out there. Until they're caught, you and are safer if you're under my direct protection. Working for me would mean living in a secure environment. Living where? I have a large estate about 20 minutes outside the city. There's a guest house where you and could stay. She could attend the private school nearby, which has an excellent academic program. Maria's head was spinning. Yesterday she had been a struggling single mother, and now a billionaire was offering her a job and a place to live. This is all happening too fast. I understand. But Maria, I need you to understand something. This isn't charity. I genuinely believe you would be an asset to my organization. Yesterday, under pressure, you made smart decisions and showed good judgment. Those are qualities I value. David stood up and walked around his desk to where Maria was sitting. Take the weekend to think about it. But please, for your safety and let my security team continue protecting you. As Maria prepared to leave David's office, she felt overwhelmed by the choices in front of her. Accepting his offer would solve her financial problems and provide with opportunities she had only dreamed of. But it would also mean entering a world she knew nothing about. Can I ask you something? She said as they reached the door. Of course. Yesterday, when I found you in the woods, did you already know who I was? David looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, was it really a coincidence that I found you, or did you somehow arrange for me to be there? David's expression showed genuine surprise at the question. Maria, I was kidnapped and tied to a tree for 18 hours. Trust me, there was nothing arranged about that situation. You finding me was pure chance, and I'm grateful for it every day. His response seemed sincere, but's warning echoed in Maria's mind. In the world of billionaires and corporate power, could she really trust anyone? Maria spent Friday evening sitting at her kitchen table with David's job offer contract spread out in front of her. She had read it 3 times, but the legal language was difficult to understand. The salary he was offering was 3 times what she currently made from both of her jobs combined. The benefits package included full health insurance, dental care, and a college fund for. Was in her bedroom doing homework, occasionally calling out math questions for Maria to help with. The normalcy of the evening felt strange when contrasted with the life-changing decision Maria was trying to make. Her phone rang at 8 o'clock. It was, "Have you decided what you're going to do about the billionaire's offer?" "I'm still thinking about it." "Maria, I've been doing some research on David, and I found some things that worry me." "What kind of things?" "There are articles about him from a few years ago. Apparently, he had some kind of scandal involving a female employee. The details are vague, but she filed a lawsuit against him for harassment." Maria felt her stomach drop. What happened with the lawsuit? "It was settled out of court. The woman signed a non-disclosure agreement so she couldn't talk about what happened. But Maria, this is exactly what I was worried about. Rich men like this have power, and sometimes they abuse it." After hung up, Maria sat staring at the contract with new doubts. Was David's offer genuine gratitude, or was it something else? She thought back to their interactions over the past few days. He had always been respectful and professional, but information made her question her judgment. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Maria was having breakfast with when there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, she saw Detective. "Mrs. Santos, I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I have some updates about the kidnapping case that you should know about." Maria invited the detective in and sent to her room to play. "We've arrested 3 men in connection with Mr.'s kidnapping," detective said. "They were professionals, just like he said. They work for a criminal organization that specializes in kidnapping wealthy executives for ransom." "Does that mean it's over? Am I safe?" "We believe these were the men responsible, but there's something else you need to know." During questioning, one of them mentioned that they had been watching Mr. for weeks before the kidnapping. They knew his routines, including the fact that he sometimes took early morning runs through different areas of the city. "Well, what does that have to do with me?" "They also knew about you, Mrs. Santos. They knew you walked through those woods every morning on your way to work." Maria felt her blood turn cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this might not have been a coincidence. They might have been planning to use you somehow, maybe as leverage against Mr. if they needed it." The detective's words made Maria's head spin. "But I didn't even know David before this happened." They didn't know that. All they knew was that a woman walked through those woods every morning at the same time, and that she worked for wealthy families in Heights. They might have thought you had connections they could exploit. After Detective left, Maria called David immediately. She needed answers. "Maria, I was just about to call you. I heard the police made arrests." "David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." "Did you know me before the kidnapping? Had you been watching me or investigating me before I found you in the woods?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "No, Maria, I had never seen you before that morning. Why would you ask that?" Maria told him what detective had said about the kidnappers knowing about her routine. "That's disturbing," David said, "but it doesn't change the fact that I didn't know you existed before you saved my life." "There's something else. A friend of mine found news articles about a harassment lawsuit against you a few years ago." Another pause, longer this time. "I see. Is it true?" "It's complicated, Maria. Can we meet in person to discuss this? There are things I can explain better face to face." An hour later, Maria found herself sitting across from David in a quiet coffee shop downtown. He looked tired, and she could see stress in his eyes. "The lawsuit your friend found was filed by a woman named Jennifer, who worked in my company's marketing department," David began. "She claimed I had made inappropriate advances toward her." Did you?" "No, but I made the mistake of developing feelings for her, and I think she misinterpreted some of my attempts to ask her out." David ran his hand through his hair. "When she filed the lawsuit, my lawyers advised me to settle rather than fight it in court. They said even if I won, the publicity would damage my company's reputation." "So you paid her to keep quiet?" "I paid her to make the problem go away, yes. But Maria, I want you to know that I have never harassed anyone, and I would never use my position to pressure someone into a relationship." Maria studied his face, trying to decide if she believed him. He seemed sincere, but she was beginning to realize that she really didn't know this man at all. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to make your decision about the job offer based on complete information. If you don't trust me, then working for me wouldn't be good for either of us." They sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "David, can I ask you something personal?" Sure." "Why is this job offer so important to you? You could hire anyone. You could get someone with an MBA or years of experience managing estates. Why me?" David looked out the window at the busy street. "Do you want the honest answer?" "Oh, yes. Because in 42 years of life, I have never met anyone who helped me without wanting something in return. My entire world is filled with people who are nice to me because of my money or my influence. When you found me tied to that tree, you had no idea who I was, and you risked your safety to help me anyway." He turned back to look at Maria. "I've been thinking about this all week. That morning in the woods, for the first time in years, someone saw me as just a human being who needed help, not as David the billionaire, just as a person in trouble." Maria could hear the loneliness in his voice, and despite her concerns, she felt sympathy for him. "But that doesn't mean I'd be good at managing your household staff." "Maybe not at first, but I can teach you about managing staff and handling logistics. I can't teach someone to have integrity and courage, and those are the qualities I need most." They talked for another hour, and gradually Maria began to understand David better. He had grown up poor, built his company from nothing, and accumulated vast wealth, but somewhere along the way, he had lost the ability to trust people's motives. "If I took this job," Maria said finally, "what would it actually involve?" "Overseeing the staff at my estate, managing my personal schedule, coordinating with my security team, and helping me with personal projects that require someone I trust completely. And would attend Riverside Academy, one of the best private schools in the state. Full scholarship, of course. That evening, Maria sat down for a serious conversation. Sweetheart, Mom has been offered a new job that would change a lot of things for us. Looked up from her coloring book. What kind of changes? We would move to a nicer place, and you would go to a new school. Mom would make more money, so we could buy nicer things and not worry about bills as much. Would I have to leave my friends? You'd make new friends at the new school. I considered this with the seriousness that children bring to major life changes. Is this because of the man you helped? Oh, yes. Is he a good man? The question caught Maria off guard. How do you explain moral ambiguity to a 7-year-old? I think so, but it's complicated. He's very rich and powerful, which means he's different from people like us. But you saved his life, so he must trust you. Yes, I think he does. Then maybe we should trust him too. Sunday morning, Maria made her decision. She called David and asked to meet him at his estate so she could see where they would be living if she accepted his offer. The estate was even more impressive than Maria had expected. The main house was a massive stone structure surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens. The guest house where she and would live was larger than any place Maria had ever called home. David gave them a tour of both houses and the grounds, was amazed by the swimming pool, the tennis court, and the small stable where David kept 2 horses. For a little girl who had grown up in a small apartment, the estate felt like a fairy tale. What do you think? David asked Maria as they watched explore the guest house. It's beautiful, but it doesn't feel real. Oh, what do you mean? I mean this isn't my world, David. I'm a house cleaner from Riverside. I don't know how to live in a place like this or manage staff or coordinate with security teams. You'll learn, Maria. I've made my fortune by taking calculated risks. You saved my life through quick thinking and courage. Those aren't skills you learn in business school. Maria looked around the spacious guest house, had found the bedroom that would be hers, and was already imagining how she would arrange her toys. If I do this, I need some guarantees. Such as, first, if it doesn't work out for any reason, you help me find another job and give me time to transition. I can't afford to lose everything if this fails. Agreed. Second, education continues to be a priority, regardless of what happens between us professionally. Of course. Third, I want everything in writing, including my job responsibilities, so there's no confusion about what you expect from me. That's reasonable. Maria took a deep breath. And fourth, if you ever make me feel uncomfortable or pressure me for anything beyond my job duties, I will quit immediately, and I expect you to honor all the agreements we've made. David met her eyes directly. Maria, I understand why you need to say that, given what you learned about the lawsuit. I give you my word that our relationship will be strictly professional. That evening, as Maria and sat in their small apartment for what might be one of the last times. Maria reflected on the decision she had made. "Mom, are you scared about the new job?" asked as they cuddled on the couch. "A little bit. It's always scary when your life changes a lot all at once." "But good scary or bad scary?" Maria considered the question. "Good scary, I think, like when you're about to go down a big slide at the playground." 3 weeks later, Maria and moved into the guest house at the estate. Maria's first day as David's personal assistant was overwhelming. She spent the morning being introduced to the household staff: a chef, 2 house cleaners, a gardener, and a maintenance technician. Everyone was polite and professional, but she could sense their curiosity about the woman who had replaced the previous assistant. David had prepared a detailed orientation packet for her, explaining the daily routines, the security protocols, and her primary responsibilities. He had also arranged for her to spend a week shadowing his secretary at the office to learn his professional schedule and preferences. "The most important thing," told her, "is that Mr. values efficiency and honesty above everything else. He doesn't like surprises, and he doesn't like people who tell him what they think he wants to hear." Adapted to her new life with the resilience that children possess. Riverside Academy was challenging academically, but she thrived on the higher expectations. She made friends quickly and joined the school's art club and drama program. "Mom, did you know they have a library with actual librarians?" announced excitedly after her first week. "And they teach French and Spanish and computer programming." Watching flourish in her new environment reinforced Maria's belief that accepting David's offer had been the right decision, despite her ongoing uncertainties about his motives. A month into her new job, Maria had settled into a routine. She managed David's personal calendar, coordinated with his security team for travel arrangements, and oversaw the household staff. She was good at the work, partly because she approached it with the same attention to detail she had always brought to her house cleaning jobs. The relationship between Maria and David remained professional, but gradually became more comfortable. He sought her opinion on matters ranging from menu planning for business dinners to recommendations for charitable donations. Maria discovered that David was actually quite generous with his wealth, supporting education programs and homeless shelters throughout the city. One evening in December, David knocked on the door of the guest house. This was unusual because he typically communicated with Maria through text messages or phone calls. "I wanted to talk to you about something," he said when she answered the door. "Of course, is everything okay?" "More than okay, actually. I've been thinking about your situation here, and I want to make some changes to our arrangement." Maria felt a flutter of anxiety. "What kind of changes?" "I want to offer you equity in the company." "I don't understand what that means." "It means I want to give you shares of stock in technologies. If the company does well, your shares become more valuable. It's a way of making sure you benefit from the success of the work you're doing." Maria was stunned. "David, I've only been working for you for a month." "And in that month, You've improved the efficiency of my personal operations significantly. More importantly, you've allowed me to focus on strategic business decisions because I trust you to handle the details. David handed her a folder. I've also had my lawyers set up a trust fund for college education. Regardless of what happens with your job here, her education will be fully funded through graduate school if she chooses. Maria opened the folder and saw documents that were far too complex for her to understand, but the numbers she could make out were staggering. David, I can't accept this. It's too much. Maria, in the business world, we call this a retention package. I'm investing in you because I believe you'll continue to be valuable to my organization for years to come. That night, after was asleep, Maria called to tell her about David's latest offer. He's giving you stock in his company? Asked incredulously. Apparently. Maria, do you understand what this means? If his company's stock continues to grow, you could eventually be worth millions of dollars yourself. It doesn't feel real. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is his way of making sure you never leave or never speak about whatever secrets you might learn working so closely with him. Or maybe he's genuinely grateful for what I did and wants to share his success with me. Be careful, Maria. Rich people don't give away millions of dollars without getting something in return. Despite warnings, Maria decided to accept David's offer. She had been poor her entire life, and the opportunity to secure's future was too important to turn down based on suspicions about David's motives. As Christmas approached, Maria realized that her life had been completely transformed in the space of a few months. She was living in luxury, earning more money than she had ever imagined, and providing with opportunities that most children could only dream of. But more importantly, she had discovered that her act of courage in helping a stranger had led to something she hadn't expected, a sense of purpose and achievement that went far beyond financial security. David had been true to his word about keeping their relationship professional, and over time, Maria had come to respect him not just as her employer, but as someone who had overcome significant challenges to build something meaningful. On Christmas Eve, as Maria and decorated a tree in their guest house, asked a question that made Maria pause. Mom, do you think Mr. is lonely? What makes you ask that? Because his house is so big, but he lives there all by himself. And sometimes when he talks to me, he looks sad. Maria had noticed the same thing. Despite his wealth and success, David seemed to have few genuine personal relationships. Maybe he is lonely sometimes, sweetheart. We should invite him for Christmas dinner. Grandma always said that no one should be alone on Christmas. The suggestion surprised Maria, but as she thought about it, she realized that was right. David had given them so much, and perhaps what he needed in return wasn't professional efficiency or business success, but simple human connection. That's a wonderful idea. Let's ask him. When Maria knocked on David's door that evening to extend the invitation, she could see the genuine surprise and pleasure in his expression. You want to have Christmas dinner together? Thought you might be lonely spending Christmas by yourself. She's a very perceptive little girl. So you'll come. I'd love to. Christmas dinner in the guest house was a revelation for all of them. Away from the formal atmosphere of business meetings and professional obligations, David relaxed in a way Maria had never seen before. He told stories about his childhood, asked about her favorite subjects in school, and helped with the dishes afterward. As the evening wound down and fell asleep on the couch, Maria and David found themselves sitting by the fireplace, talking about their hopes for the future. Maria, can I tell you something? Of course. That morning when you found me in the woods, I had been having the worst year of my life. The company was facing some serious challenges. I was dealing with pressure from investors, and I felt like I was surrounded by people who only cared about what I could do for them. David stared into the fire. When you helped me that day, it reminded me that there are still people in the world who do the right thing simply because it's right. It gave me hope when I really needed it. I'm glad I could help. You did more than help, Maria. You saved me in ways that had nothing to do with the kidnapping. As Maria looked at this powerful man sitting in her living room, sharing his vulnerabilities, she realized that their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected. It wasn't romantic, but it was a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and trust. 6 months after finding David tied to a tree in the woods, Maria had discovered that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can change the course of an entire life. She had gained financial security, professional opportunities, and a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. But perhaps most importantly, she had learned that true courage isn't just about taking physical risks to help others. Sometimes courage means accepting help when it's offered, taking chances on new opportunities, and believing that you deserve the good things that life can bring. As she watched sleep peacefully on the couch and listened to David's quiet breathing beside the dying fire, Maria reflected on how far they had all come from that foggy morning in the woods. Her simple act of kindness had created a bond that had transformed 3 lives in ways that none of them could have imagined. The kidnappers who had meant to destroy David's life had inadvertently brought together 3 people who needed each other more than they had realized. In trying to tear down one person's world, they had actually helped build a new kind of family based not on blood or marriage, but on gratitude, respect, and genuine care for one another's. Maria had started that October morning as a struggling single mother walking through the woods to save bus fare. She ended the year as a successful business professional, a homeowner on a beautiful estate, and a friend to one of the most influential people in the country. But the greatest transformation had been internal. Maria had discovered that she was capable of much more than she had ever believed possible, and that sometimes the biggest risks in life lead to the greatest rewards. As Martinez drove her home, Maria realized that David had presented her with an opportunity that could change everything for her but opportunities like this always came with a price. and she wasn't sure yet what that price might be if kindness was about to change her life in ways she never could have imagined. The day was far from over, and already Maria could sense that nothing would ever be the same again.